This is the second day of Sesshin. Second day. Yes, second day of Rohatsu Sesshin is also going to be on YouTube besides Zoom. So, and this is on the three, or the second of the three tenets that just arose as something about having the order of immediate light as a way of protecting, separating, establishing this particular connection that this person has with the Kagyu lineage through Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and through Kobun Roshi, the Soto Zen order. Some people, off and on, people will say, well, why did you leave that? When did you? So, when did you go from here to there? And I really haven't gone anywhere. Other stuff has gone other places. You're not asking them where it's all gone. But I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still a student of the Vidyadhara. I'm still a student of His Holiness, the 16th, the 17th, Karmapa, and I'm a student of you guys, with your permission. So the title is, so I'll read the tenet. The form consciousness finds is empty as it appears and full as it is. So sounds a little complicated. It's actually extremely simple and extraordinarily complicated. So you're correct whichever direction you go. And the title of the Dharma talk is Consciousness. How many dots? 3 dots, dot, 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 as it is, capitalized, as it is. Simpler than putting down the whole tenet. So the first one was consciousness. Consciousness always finds its own form. We can talk about that a little bit. I gave a talk on that yesterday. Thanks for helping me with the memory portion of this. The second one is the form consciousness finds is empty as it appears. So anything that shows up, whatever it is, in its illusory separation from everything else, which you are doing with your mind, fundamentally things are not separate from each other. Well, sure, fingers are separate from each other. The zafus or cushions in the meditation hall, people are separate, ideas are separate, thoughts are separate. Mice are trying to separate themselves from cats, usually. Well, things are separated, but the form consciousness finds is empty as it appears. So whatever consciousness is doing, and it's not separate from anything fundamentally, even ultimately, but that's something that has to be realized or understood or seen directly. It's not something you can make up or think about or track some kind of concepts about it. Even though there are a lot of people who write books about this, who explain it conceptually, and will it could be very entertaining, could be a lot of fun, could spend a lot of time studying that. And it doesn't mean that it's not clear. It doesn't mean that those concepts aren't very clear about what they're talking about, but it's the concept about what they're talking about. What is it about? Not separate. The two nots, not separate and not together. And what does that do in the thinking mind, the processing mind, the conceptual mind? Kind of stops everything. And then you have to go back with the concepts and kind of relook at that. What is that pointing at? And then you can go back towards that again with your conceptual mind. We need this. As you know, we study everything we can. I have a book list of 50 different books. I would put more on there, but I think that's enough for now. And we have, how many book study sessions do we have these days? Anybody count them? Is there 8 of them or 9 of them? 9 just in the monastery. And then if you add the ones in Petoskey and Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids, there's a few more that happen weekly. So we're studying a lot of material, and it's a good thing. So consciousness, the form consciousness finds, when I say finds, it's just a way of talking about it. We can deconstruct that if you feel it necessary, is empty. So it's empty of your imputation about it. It's just that. And even that is actually, even to say it's just that, it's just a way of pointing at it, but even that is too much. So when you begin to see what this is, you won't be thinking or feeling or smelling or tasting or touching or thinking or hearing in the way you did before. It'll still be happening, but there will be no identity behind it. You won't be separate. I'm not talking about something romantic or magical here, even though you could use magic, but you won't be separate from anything you see. And you'll get used to it. And it'll be when it first starts to show up that way, you might be kind of astonished in some sense because, well, that's way too simple, isn't it? But then you kind of get used to that. It's always not separate. It's always not separate. And even this apparent used to was, is that a phrase that I could use? It used to was separation, the separation that used to get you, like your anger, your irritation, your aggravation with others, your aggravation with yourself because you're aggravated with others because they're aggravated with you about how you've been acting, and you should straighten up. I mean, you could get all wound up in that, what do they call those strings you put on your fingers? That it's like, it's a good representation for orderly chaos, which Vidyadhara uses. It's chaos, but it's orderly. What is that called? Cat's cradle? Yeah. I knew it was something to do with cats. Meow. Did you know that meow, meow is Mandarin for cat? I'm studying languages slowly. The form consciousness finds, whatever it is, any form that consciousness is that you're aware of, you're conscious of, even though initially it's like you're aware of something, because you still have an identity that is looking, receiving, looking, shutting down, looking, ignoring, passion, aggression, and ignorance. You're jockeying around for a position because you want something else. And what do you want? Well, fundamentally, we want to be happy. We want to be content. We want to be fulfilled. We want to be successful. We want to be, make our, parents proud of us. When you have a teacher, then you kind of want your teacher to be proud of you. I can tell you right now, if you're looking at this, I'm extremely proud of you, because this is not something that's very popular. Much easier to go and listen to someone else talk about something else. The form consciousness finds is empty. So going back to that again, whatever is found, the thing that the imputation, because our own imputation of I'm here and I'm viewing that over there because of our identification with the body, the five skandhas, form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness, is so powerful. We are conditioned to do this. And when we're born and we're raised up and we're taught, don't do this, stop doing that. You should know better than that. Now, why did you spell that? Ever heard that before? It's like, puts you in kind of a existential bind when you're 3 or 4 years old. You're not sure exactly why you did spell that, but you've been asked a question, and this is an adult, so perhaps you should come up with an answer. And it better not be a wisecrack. Like, who wants to know? Especially to your mom. But it's difficult. If you remember back how you were starting to navigate the extreme confusion in some areas and really powerful clarity. The confusion was about who you were, as I may be a little bit off from what your experience was, but your clarity was about others. Did you notice? You notice you could, if 15 adults were in a room, if you had the words for it, you could actually point it out which ones are crazy. Already, you're only 3 because of the way they acted, the way they treated you. And the ones that just looked at you and maybe interacted with you in where you were at, you noticed that right away. You could call that friendly, not just condescending adult. be quite lucky if you had a parent that was doing that. Usually it was an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor. In my case, it was neighbors. Consciousness finds a form that is empty as it appears. So however it appears, it's empty of that appearance. And then the end of that tenet is the form consciousness finds as empty as it appears and full as it is. You notice I keep looking down to read it because I can't remember it. Maybe if I was threatened, I can remember it. And full as it is, it's full of what it is. And what is it full of? You can use lots of different words. I prefer to say Buddha. It's completely awake. Nothing sleeps anywhere. Nothing is asleep. This is a misunderstanding because our idea of sleep is that we are aware of something else. Maybe so. So all of the teachings, not all of them, but most of the teachings are pointing at this in different ways from different directions with different elaborations and different condensations, this and this and this. And the one that I talk about and others we study in the Samdhi Nirmachana Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, and other places is Vasubandhu is the three natures. Paratantra, or dependent origination. This causes this, causes that. This is and this is and this and this and this and this and this. It's just simple collection of things bouncing around without any particular direction or personality. And then there's the imaginary nature, or is it Parikalpita? Do you know?
I was looking at her.
Oh, you were looking at her when I was talking?
Yeah.
In other words, you were
Watching
looking at her and I was talking and you were ignoring what was being said. Okay, that's good. So you were teaching.
I was just watching what was
You see, I knew I should have.
moving. Will you repeat your question?
No, I don't have to. You just nailed me there. I'm a sunk ship. Yeah, you were watching what was moving, which is what I should have been doing. Should I correct myself? So something arises and then we make up stuff about it. We don't just see what arises. We don't just, the form arises and we, instead of seeing that it's empty, we add stuff on based on passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, wanting something else. Simply put, life is suffering. First noble truth. Why? We want something else. We want other stuff. We want that. And of course, the last two are that can end and train your mind, simply put. So this is something you could contemplate, you could look at, this is why this is set up this way. These three tenets, which I'll talk about the third one tomorrow. Don't ask me about it today, if you're familiar with it, because I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't plan much. And these have been arising for several years. It didn't happen this year, last year, or even the year before. I don't know where they even came from. I didn't think them up. And that doesn't mean that some angel delivered it either. Although there are angels everywhere. So full as it is, this is the perfected nature, or one of the interpretations for Parinishpana. It's just perfect. There isn't anything else but this. It's not only full as it is, it's astonishing as it is. And it's also not astonishing at all because it's as it is. So the astonishment part comes when one sees what? Contrast. You can't be astonished without contrast. And if you have contrast, this is separation, this is delusion. Do you have to get rid of that? No. You don't have to get rid of anything. The worst possible feeling or misery that can arise in your sense fields, if you're trying to get rid of it, trying to medicate it, trying to meditate it, trying to do anything with it, this is spiritual materialism. Trying to use spiritual techniques to get somewhere. And if you're somewhere, which is in the middle of gloom or depression or irritation or anxiety or emotions that you didn't know you had until somebody came along and triggered them. They didn't pour emotions into you. They triggered emotions that you had in the basement or in the attic or in the closet that you can't find the key to. Somebody came along and say, I'll open that for you. You can take a look at that. Don't get rid of that. Just look at it. Just observe. Just observe. Just observe whatever is arising in the sense fields, including the mind. Do nothing with it. And in this way, become clear about the delusion. You can't become clear about clarity unless you're pouring water into water, in which case work is done. That's just a way of talking about there's nothing to do. Pouring water into water, why do that? But that's a way of talking about ultimacy using relative ideas. Is it true? Is it true? What are you thinking about? You should have sat in the front row. Where's your little person at?
Upstairs.
With his dad? I bet he misses you. The form consciousness finds is empty as it appears and full as it is. Empty, full. Not exactly different from each other. There's no conclusion. There's no particular result. There's just the path. And eventually there isn't any path because there isn't anywhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. And then if one has received and practices the bodhisattva vow, then you're a servant to everyone. Maybe not in the way they would like you to be, but you meet everyone where they're at, and if they give you permission, you help them, but you don't interfere with them. No sales pitch, no advertisements. How do you pronounce that? Advertisements or advertisements?
Depends on where you live.
How about Chicago? Norman Mailer wrote a book back in the 50s, yeah, I think, called Advertisements for Myself. It's an interesting book. Can't remember what he said, but it was interesting. I was really into Norman Mailer at one point. So let's have some questions around this material. The easier, the better. See who is easy. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. So go ahead.
If Buddha nature is full, or if everything is empty as it is, and empty as it appears and full as it is, does this fullness have qualities?
It's taught that way sometimes.
What are they?
Find somebody that teaches that. I hesitate to go into the qualities. Then we start a search. We try to see if we have that quality yet. And you might as well be slamming a door on yourself. So this is another way that I would work with people individually, is if you want to know about that, there's tons of material out there that will tell you all about the qualities, lists of them. You're already reading books that talk about that. Name one of them. Not the qualities, the books.
The current one is Gone Beyond, about the Abhisamayalankara Sutra.
No. Did that list those qualities of a
Not
Buddha?
yet, but I'm not
Hopeful.
I'm
So I'm not trying to put you off. We could go, I don't have those memorized, but there are traditionally qualities there. But you could just reflect on that rather than just receive a platter full of qualities that you're looking and comparing to see how you're doing. That's the same reason I don't ignore the 10 stages, or sometimes 11 or 12 stages of or bhumis or grounds of the bodhisattva, but I don't particularly teach them because they're so incredibly variable, and they're like magnets for the thought patterns. They're like magnets for which bhumi are you on? Would I be on that bhumi? Probably not. I'm thinking, it seems like I'm kind of on the 8th bhumi, but I'm pretty much stuck on the 2nd. So same thing with qualities. I don't mean to be disrespectful to your question. I think it's a good question, but I would say two things. I don't remember, and go look it up.
Tom.
Got one right here, and then I'll come back to you. I think it's Don, right? Go ahead.
Is as it appears different than as it is?
Let me read it. Let's see. Empty as it appears. Okay, the path quality makes it different, but the fundamental understanding is nothing is separate from anything. So even confusion is awakening. Even samsara is nirvana. But this is not something I made up. It's just that if you see it, then maybe, is this what they were talking about? That you can't find anything else? Is that what they mean? Is that what they mean when there is no otherness to anything? When everyone you look at is very mirror-like, even the mirror quality falls away because that's an object. Those fall away. Go ahead.
Is there a way for those teachings that do seem to separate to support us and not enforce our tendency to separate?
Paraphrase what you said. Think about what you said and then say it in a different way. Paraphrase it. I'll wait. Well, then just repeat it. See if it changes as you talk about it. What's the question? Do you know what you said? Interesting. So that would be the response. You're not being corrected. That's correct. The way that shows up is correct. Does that feel like you're being corrected? Good. Further questions? Don, go ahead.
Don Bowing. Is the appearance of any form dependent on the particular consciousness that's finding it?
Yes. Yes. If there's a particularity, consciousness really doesn't have any location, and it also doesn't belong to anyone. It's just on loan, kind of. You could say, here, we're going to bite off a chunk of this, and here, open wide. throw it in there, and then you become born and you have a mom and a dad, and then you just kind of assume you're somebody because your mom and dad tell you who you are. Don't do that. Don't pick that up. That's not yours. Don't hit your brother. Those kind of things. Remember those? Or you didn't have a brother? But we're indoctrinated. We're conditioned to buy into this whole body-mind complex, unless you happen to be born into an environment where you begin to hear these teachings very, very early. And even then, depending on the karma that you came down the chute with you, you may be able to receive that. You may not. You may be ready to receive this, and you may not. There's the causes and conditions that arise are untraceable. There, you can't find the source for anything. There are relative sources for everything, even for the galaxies. There's some kind of a source there you could kind of invent if you were a physicist. But there's no fundamental source for this.
Don Bowing, so what is form without appearance? Bowing.
Something's in hiding.
Is that emptiness?
How's it look to you?
I think that's too easy.
Do I want it easy?
I just wanted your validation.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you. I validate that. I totally approve of it. What did you say?
I said, is form without appearance emptiness?
Now make a statement out of that.
Form without appearance is emptiness.
Is that true?
What is truth?
Don't do that.
Um,
You don't get to do that. I get to do that.
Okay, so I'm doubting it, so I don't think it is true.
So, and it's, and notice the little edge of aggression that came up with that response.
Mm-hmm.
Do you notice it?
Yeah.
And you know, that aggression is one of the three poisons, and it's just a sliver of it. There's not much there, but it's there, and it's an aggressive form of ignorance, just like passion is a grasping form of ignorance. But the fundamental situation is the ignorance. So you could use that. You can back up. Don't get rid of that. Don't get rid of your confusion, but please see it. See it. Don't blame anybody for anything. Even if they just came up and hit you or ran into your car or stole your bicycle. I mean, sure, you can go get the bicycle or you can get upset with them, but fundamentally, don't blame. There isn't anyone else. If you think there is, you'll continue to be a nuisance to yourself and to everyone else. Transcend this. And how do you transcend it? You see you look at the grasping. Don't stop grasping. Don't stop being aggressive. Be the aggression you're trying to get rid of. This doesn't mean pop somebody, but you have to actually be those emotions. You have to have some kind of, for lack of a better word, some kind of humility over the situation. You have to cave in a little bit to that so you can be this person that was born, in my case, 79 years ago. So you can actually be who you are. It's hard. Do it anyway. Yes.
Do we have to be that aggression to get the right feedback from the world?
I think that's a very slippery area, and it's a very thin situation that's constantly morphing around. As long as there's confusion, as long as there's a desire for something else, even enlightenment, then that's a very slippery area. And what do we do with that? Just observe it. Just watch the slipperiness. Don't go in there with any tools or any repair work. Other teachers teach differently. They are not incorrect, but I'm not doing that. Yes.
What would happen if we slipped there?
Just climb back up the mountain again and slip again and climb back up and slip again. You would just get relative in your truth in your face over and over again, which, depending on your awareness practice, if you're spending some time sitting down, holding still and watching the movement, then that will show up more. It'll be more apparent as to what is happening there. It won't necessarily be more apparent as what you should do about it. You actually be receiving what's happening rather than producing. So you hear me talk all the time. If you can, just receive, don't produce. But if you have to produce, give it 10%. The other 90% of the time, receive everything. I don't care how horrible, ugly, or fattening it is. Do it anyway.
Shokabowing.
Yes, sir.
Is the fundamental ignorance different than the aggression?
Well, it's functioning in a different way. The aggression is actively coming out of that not wanting something and being aggressive, not wanting something and being grasping or passionate. And then the fundamental ignorance is just not much at all. That's why that's very similar to Buddha nature. And it's actually not separate from it. It's ultimate situation is none of that is separate. But that would be the ignoring part seems to be the kind of the, what would you call it, stasis, something that's not doing anything. That's why it's difficult to see, because it's an actual shutting down that is very subtle, sometimes called fixation. Find something, you like it, you don't like it, no matter what it is, just lock down on it, even though it might want to move.
Shokabowing. When
Yes.
you're talking about the tenet and you're talking about the appearance of something, and then as it is, what is the appearance of fundamental ignorance?
Well, fundamentally, you think something appears. You think, when I say you think, I'm not accusing you of anything. You're asking me a question. I'm saying that if you see what this is, nothing's really happening. We're not saying that the sun doesn't come up and the moon doesn't argue with it. Of course, cause and effect, that's happening everywhere. That's why this incredible labyrinth we call samsara is so magnetic and so seductive and so scary, because it's all these nerve endings are exposed to weather, all kinds of weather. But to see what it is doesn't mean that you're somehow oblivious. I'm not talking about that kind of situation, but something where you see fundamentally what it is. So if nothing is separate, if you fundamentally see that, then even the movement is just an illusion. This is an illusion. These are illusions. Doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have a quality there. More questions? Shoot.
A question from Raphael in New York.
Raphael?
How can we tell if our study of the Buddha Dharma is becoming a hindrance in our actual practice?
Well, if you have a teacher, you might ask her. You need to have a teacher. That's what I'm basically saying. Her or them or him. Not really knowing you, but having had some interchange with you a little bit here and there. I would say, just keep it very simple. Sit a lot, but also study. Well, I'm biased here. I've studied a little bit, and I have a book list. So here's what I think. If you want to study something, stick with these books. I don't do that because those are the right ones, and the ones that you run into with some other teacher aren't just as good, maybe better. It's just that if you're going to ask me questions about the material, it needs to be something I'm at least familiar with. Otherwise, then I have to go back and study a bunch of material. And there's just tons and tons. I mean, you could just spend the rest of your life reading Jeffrey Hopkins. and and other uh, translators and teachers and interpreters and commentaries and so on. So I would maybe pick out a couple. You're always welcome to join our study group, which happens once or sometimes twice a day. We just sit down with a particular text. I think we've been through this, but we're not on it right now. We've been through the Lankavatara Sutra 4 times together as a group studying it. We've been studying Dogen for years, every noon Wednesday. Pick out 1 or 2 and just stay with those and study with others. You don't have to study with our Sangha, but study with other people so that you're not just your own little study group. It took me a long time, decades, to realize how important it is to study with others. When I first set that up back in the mid 70s, I thought I was doing it for others, but I was really doing it to train my mind by working with other people, talking about the Dharma. Probably didn't help anybody. Isan, go ahead.
Isan bowing. If we're, so you say to be the aggression you're trying to get rid of without doing aggression, what is that? To be the aggression you're trying to get rid of?
So good one. So something is happening, or you're feeling this way or that way or whatever. And you'll notice that if you're a meditator, if you're not a meditator, you're probably going to be trapped by your aggression, and it's going to be coming out of your mouth or out of your fist or your samurai sword before you even know what's happening, because you are entrained by your neurosis, and I think you think that's your identity. You need to defend this. You think you are the body. You need to attack. You need to protect. You need to. But if you're training your mind, you slowly over time, and it won't be a strong credential. It won't be. It'll be more like fragrance, rather than some kind of idea or thought pattern. Some other sense field will probably be more sensitive in that area, and it will be a quality that will begin to arise where you see that the raw leading edge of the aggression before you hook up your musculature, your vocal cords, or your frontal lobe, however you want to look at it. There are different ways of dividing it up. But you'll get a better feeling for that. It's not comfortable. It's not like if I'm helping you with your meditation practice, you probably are kind of in for it, because it's not fun. It's not entertaining. And I want you to see the neurosis that you're avoiding. That's the help I got from both from Trungpa Rinpoche and from Kobun. They both could see right through this old man. And they didn't hesitate to help me and put helping me before anything, as far as I could tell. They didn't care whether I liked them or not, but I really cared whether they liked me, because I was really trying to see am I getting anywhere? Am I kind of close to enlightenment? Maybe really smart, I actually didn't think I was really smart, but I thought I could make them think I was. A little bit different. Further question about that, Isan, if you have it, it's a good question.
So what it sounds like to me is that the experience of the aggression or the neurosis comes up and is quite uncomfortable and quite abrasive. And to be that, you just take it instead of turning away and doing something with it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty well said. But you don't have to double up on it in another direction, and with the idea that with some kind of a little envelope off to one side, that if you open it and read it, said, if I do this a lot, I'll never do this again. There are no guarantees.
Okay.
You may never get rid of it. The anger may come up. The rest of your causes and conditions are dependently arisen. The whole thing is dependent. So, and you can't track it down. So the fundamental situation is not so much to get rid of the aggression or get rid of the world or get rid of anybody or get rid of negativity or your difficult feelings, but fundamentally by looking at what's coming and going, by looking at the neurosis and not joining it, not rejecting it, and not shutting down on that passion, aggression, and ignorance, you eventually will see that there's no one witnessing that it's just self-existing. It just exists as it is. It's quite a conundrum for the thinking mind, and the thinking mind starts to go in there with its machinery, and it just finds everything just collapses or rusts, or all the lubricants go out of it, and it can't move anymore. It's still there, and you still are probably going to feel trapped. But your vow, if you receive the vow, the vow, just reflect on the vow, be with all things, put others before yourself. And that way, so what? So you're suffering, so what? Not so what, even that's extra.
Mhm.
It may
That's
go-
helpful.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
I just said that's very helpful. Carrying that forward a little bit beyond just where I had it. That was, thank you. Mhm.
Carl Bowing.
Go ahead, Carl.
To follow up on Isan's question, if you're identifying that the edge of that aggression and just being it, doesn't that require a sort of relative understanding, at least at first? Like that somehow I am separate than this thing? So is relative understanding a step toward a more absolute understanding? Bowing?
Yes. Teresa.
Teresa Bowing, what does it mean when you say to become clear about the delusion? Bowing.
So if we go the other way, and what often happens with people, we want to be clear about clarity. We want to just feel more clear about how clear we are, or clear about everything. So we want to have, so we stay in the relative Mobius strip of clear and cloudy and clear and cloudy and clear until we stay in relative truth. We keep looking for something else when actually the Buddha nature awakening is in the delusion. This is why often one of the images for that is finding the Buddha in the palm of your hand, finding a jewel in a garbage heap. That's where you have to look. You have to look in your own personal garbage heap. And it doesn't matter if you flinch, but you can only flinch for so long. Just do it anyway. It's not like torturing yourself. So do it softly. Some traditions are very macho and trying to kind of force the issue there with the sticks and clubs and strong forms that won't let you bend your knee. I'm not going to fight with that. If you want to do it that way, go ahead. There are teachers that will work with you that way. But I just say, sit a lot. But when I say something, watch what moves, you're going to watch the delusion. You need to watch it. If it's on the cushion, that's delusion. If it's getting up and going to the refrigerator, that's delusion. If it's going to the bedroom and complaining because your partner hasn't made the bed, that's delusion. If it's going to the bedroom and not having a partner and wishing you had a partner, it's delusion. I'm not saying it's not painful. I'm not saying that we don't want things to be otherwise. But it's unreal because of its apparent tugging at itself for something else, something else, something else, something else. And you don't go the other way and say, there isn't anything else, unless you're functioning the way I am, and I do that. I say that. So, but I don't do it necessarily just some kind of a nothing else teaching, because sometimes there needs to be something else. So we need to work with it relatively and work with it as it is. So this is why sometimes they're called stages on the path. Some people are kind of almost orderly going along in a certain way, and other people need to be kicked off the cliff. Depends on who it is. Again, dependent origination. Don't get too close. When I found out who Trungpa Rinpoche was, I backed up because I knew I was in for it. Other people moved to Boulder and became his shoe shine people. In other words, waited on him hand and foot. I couldn't do that. It was just too frightening.
Shokubang,
Yes.
how did the backing up with Chogyam help you fundamentally?
Because I just backed up to get a breath of fresh air. It wasn't fresh, it was actually stale air, but I was used to it. So I backed up, but I didn't leave. I stayed, and I treated him. I became a student of his. It was choiceless. I couldn't help it. I wanted to, and I didn't want to. You guys know. I mean, you know, when you really want something, but you don't really want to do that, but you really want something, you don't really want to do that. And then picking and choosing. And I was just happened to pick. I'm staying here. And once I decided, I tend to be quite stubborn anyway. Once I decided I wasn't gonna, my life depended on, I wasn't gonna go anywhere. And there was all kinds of things happened, as any of you have tracked the Vidyadhara or any of the Shambhala lineage and everything. It's just a big mess from the point of view of relative truth. But you can't go in and pick and choose. You can't sort that out. You're not going to find an angel anywhere. I'm not validating anybody or anything. I'm just saying I would not be here. And you've heard me say this many times. If it weren't for him, I can't do anything other than say, okay, well, he helped me and I'm going to help others if I can. Same thing with Kobun Roshi. Had no interest in me liking him. More about that if you have it.
Shokubang, when you talk about some of his students moved there and
Yeah.
started functioning closer to him,
Yeah.
does that relative relationship help somebody more so than somebody that might not do that?
No, makes no difference. You can't figure it out. It makes no difference. The causes and conditions that arise as each person is here, and then what is there, 30 some people here, completely unique. There's no, you can't even compare notes. That's why I often say to people, if you're having experiences to do with enlightenment or to do with working with the 3 poisons or the 6 poisons or 15 poisons, do nothing with it. Don't tell anybody about it. Don't share your experiences. Study with others, but don't compare what's happening with you. Keep it to yourself. You don't even have to tell the teaching person about it, but it might be a good idea to check in once in a while. So by the way, I can't see everybody on the screen. So if you, sometimes when we ask a question in our Sangha, we say, you know, Sokuzan bowing, or we hold up our in Gasho or Anjali. And if you might doing that on the other screen, I can't see you. I can only see 25 people here, and there's 30 some people. So you might have to yell or just move to the screen. If you're a techie, you should be able to do that. Don't you?
A question from Robert Switek.
Robert,
Is consciousness without our objectification?
yeah, consciousness is just a fundamental nature of everythting. It's just different frequencies. So our objectification, if I'm understanding your question, yes, there's we objectify this. I'm somebody. And I have a body mind. This is my identity. I am this body mind complex, and I have these thoughts. And then we turn this into a valuable object. We pick and choose, pick and choose, pick and choose. And the picking and choosing is not wrong. It's actually based on relative truth. Of course, it's correct. Just like if someone murders somebody, we put them in prison. But we don't look deep enough in the dependent origination to see that if you go way back, you'll see that this person was probably murdered in what I call, or what's commonly called, another lifetime. It may be another lifetime. It just may be the nature of consciousness to show up as individuals. Just like Trungpa Rinpoche once responded to a question that woman had about when His Holiness passed away in 1981, His Holiness the 16th Karmapa Rangjung Rigpa Dorje said, well, so will His Holiness come back? Will it be His Holiness coming back as the 17th Karmapa? And I have to paraphrase because I can't quote it exactly, but it was something like you and His Holiness, you could connect with His Holiness energy and you could come back as the 17th Karmapa, which is like another way of saying if you're practicing Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara, some kind of a practice of a deity or white Tara, like we did yesterday or day before yesterday, you are that. You aren't separate from anything. That's what these practices are about. You are that, and you're also not that. And so that's why when somebody does something terrible, they might do a whole lot of good things, and then suddenly they do something just terrible. You know, you can't track that. You can't blame. Praise and blame are really, really amazing in the labyrinth of just the wish to pin it on somebody. Somebody's got to be responsible for this. And it's well, all you have to do is watch CNN for a little while. And it's just, even the really good, so-called good people are warlike. Don't go to war. Don't go to peace. If you don't understand what I mean by that, then ask, and I will try to respond in a way that'll be helpful to you rather than control you. I don't want to control anything or anyone. Go ahead.
Is white Tara permanent?
Nothing is permanent. Nothing lasts. What it represents isn't in that dimension of permanent, impermanent, or arising and ceasing. So if you're asking about it in that way, just like who you fundamentally are, can't go away because it doesn't arise. It's not. It has no. What's the fancy word in the books? There's no ontological status. As some phenomena or something, you can't find its qualities. You can't find anything that it is. You should stop telling jokes. More? Further questions? Yes.
Jeez,
Sure,
I'm bowing. I think earlier Don asked a question if
that guy right there?
the form that consciousness takes, and I'm paraphrasing, if it's influenced by the consciousness, or if it is, and you said yes, the form we see is influenced or influenced by the consciousness, and I'm wondering if the consciousness, if there's differentiated consciousnesses.
So if there's some kind of location happening, like a body-mind complex, then the consciousness that is arising in your situation or my situation or anyone's situation is going to appear as a differentiated, just like an oak tree is different from a palm tree. So there's some kind of manifestation coming up, but then that decays and goes away and goes into the earth, into the water, into the fire, into the air. More?
Are there layers of consciousness?
Yes, from the point of view of studying them. From the ultimate point of view, there isn't anything else. There isn't anything but consciousness. Even that is extra. Fundamentally, there's always some kind of graduation to the situation of no matter how deep you go, you're going to find something until there isn't anything left, no one to go, nowhere to go, nothing to do. And this may show up while you're in a human form. It may show up when you're in some other form, in another dimension, in another layer of consciousness. This is unending because why? Hasn't begun. More?
Does the understanding come from the dismantling of consciousness?
It starts there. The provisional teachings start dismantling the five skandhas, the Four Noble Truths, taking it apart. The 12 links are really interesting and start out being quite brittle. In other words, being very solid things that connect together so we can track it. But then the more we look into it, the more we begin to see that it's not that concrete, or not even that dependable as far as a concept, because it's pointing to something beyond itself. Just like a finger, as they say in the Zen tradition, the finger pointing at the moon. If you look at the finger, then you look where it's pointing, the finger disappears. It's just relative truth, pointing at something that is not there. The moon, in a sense, is not there. More.
The tenet, as I recall, is the form that consciousness finds as empty as it appears and full as it is.
Yes.
Is there a practice quality or a way to practice that tenet?
Yes. Sit down, hold still, and watch the movement. Watch the movement until. Watch the movement until. But don't wait for anything. Patience is not waiting for something. The function of patience may start out as, like my mother said, hold your horses. I didn't have any horses. And I always wondered why you would talk to me about my horses. More?
So far, you've talked about the first and second tenet. I'm wondering if there's what the major distinction might be between the two.
It's just a way of consciousness always finds its own form. That's just saying that anything that is occurring is going to find, if there's an elseness to it, it's going to find that form. So simply put, it just means that it's just watch it. It's just that which is observing is not moving. It's just a way of talking about it to help us look more closely at the fundamental situation that is happening, which is thoughts moving in consciousness, emotions and memories arising, things getting triggered, and just observe and watch that come and go. Don't add, don't subtract, don't divide, no passion, aggression, and ignorance. Gently, there's no force. It's not that macho kind of control thing. Do it. Be respectful of the negativity you're working with instead of trying to get rid of it. Actually, it's not separate from what you're looking for. It's just showing up as abrasive and rough and prickly and hot and bad health and bad temper and bad. And most people are not free and well favored, free to come to a meeting like this where nobody's trying to make you do anything. At least I'm not. We do this together. It's mutual. I might show up as some kind of a boss or some kind of a guru or a leader or whatever. And yes, I function like that, but I do it situationally. So I'm always, whatever I see, that's what I am. Whomever I meet. Is whom appropriate in that sense? Whomever I meet. Thanks. What are you up to? Coffee person. So the third tenet, which we'll do tomorrow, is got a lot more words. That's meaningful. It tends to go in circles, which is deliberate, and it makes a lot of sense. Doesn't make any sense as it appears, but I'm using the second one to validate the third one. Let's see, but it's really nice as it is. I enjoy reading it. I've read it many, many times, and I've forced Chazon to read it a few times at gunpoint. Read this, and if you don't like it, be real careful what you say, because I've just worked hard on this. So these tenets are meant, what is the reason? It's meant to help you to use something if it's helpful. There's no requirement. Even people who are students or fully ordained monks, which I think we have several here, there's no requirement to do this. If you're a student of mine, then the requirement is train your mind. And I'm not going to interfere. You don't have to take precepts or vows or anything. Do whatever you want to do. I would say, if you're a student of mine, then stay in touch with me and participate with the Sangha. Participate, the Buddha, I'm not the Buddha, obviously, so, but teacher, teaching what is being taught, and this is part of it, but it's not all of it. I've been running my mouth for years now, with the motivation to be helpful, not just to be a smarty pants. And of course, the last one is, as I've said before, is probably the most important of the three jewels, is the Sangha, the community. You can't do this with just a teacher and just something to study, because the teacher, if they're a true teacher, they won't chase you down. They won't say, why aren't you studying with me anymore? Why don't you like me anymore? Or my teaching's not working for you? Or they might be relieved to see you go. I don't see anybody laughing. Yeah, there's a few people laughing, getting ready to leave. So as I say, don't do anything else you have to, including study the Dharma. Why do something? But if you want to do this, and I'm all about helping you with this. If you want my help, I will try to help you without meddling with you. Shoto.
Is awakening a function of the teacher?
The student, the teacher, and awakening are not different things. They just appear that way until they just stop looking that way anymore. And it's nothing particularly, there's no celebration. I mean, you could celebrate, but from the relative point of view, nothing has occurred other than you stop covering up who you are. You stop covering up your true nature. That doesn't mean you're omnipotent in the sense that you know everything. But you could say that you no longer ignore. So as long as there's a body-mind construct here, which is me or you, then there's going to be some kind of relative ignorance going on all the time. Anytime you look at one thing, you're ignoring everything else. Anytime, as I'm doing here, I'm producing. I'm producing out of what it looks like would be appropriate. I don't know how else to say it. Not particularly evaluating anything. More, go ahead.
It's kind of coming out of something you told me in a private Dokusan, and I'm wondering if I can just bring it up in private.
It's up to you.
Can I say something you said to me in that?
That's up to you. It's your information. Yes, you can say that.
You said none of your students are awakened, not yet.
Yeah, I did.
What is yet?
Well, it's going to take a while. Why, do you want to be awake? Not too happy with what's going on right now. So, by the way, it's a very valid question. Yeah, they're not. I mean, people are working on it. There's a big difference between somebody who's studying the Dharma, whether they're a student of mine and they're a student of a Thich Nhat Hanh or Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama. There's a big difference between people who are studying the Dharma with and possibly other traditions. The Advaita tradition is very powerful. Indian tradition, some of those are, depending on the teacher, very powerful. So, but no one is, people are doing well, they're practicing hard. Further question about that? Go ahead.
How can we receive that teaching and not second guess what's in front of us?
Just don't do it. Stop doing it. And how do you do that? How do you do it? You watch how you can't do it. Just watch the negativity. Watch the garbage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question, Chunchu.
Chunchu bowing. Does the appearance of something point to its fullness?
Yes. Yeah, everything is pointing out. Everything is teaching. The Buddha Dharma shows up everywhere. You have, if you're on receive and not on producing, when you see something, if you start producing, in other words, what is it? Naming it and analyzing it, judging it, and evaluating, even though it might relatively, it might deserve to be valued or devalued. whatever. It might have that context. So it's not that you aren't going to do that somewhat, but just being very observant about that approving, disapproving, and ignoring. Just watch how that moves and do nothing with it. Don't correct it. Just observe it. And so, go ahead.
If it's empty as it appears, is that telling us to look past the appearance?
No, look right at it. The appearance is empty, but we don't realize when we're confused and when we're obstructed or when we're fearful or when we're hopeful, when we're taking any kind of position around that, accepting, rejecting, or looking away, then we don't see its true nature. We don't have a direct perception of, and it begins as shunyata, or empty. We begin to think are empty of what we thought was happening there. And so but that's not the conclusion. The fullness is the conclusion, but it's not a relative fullness. But we have to say something, or we don't have to say anything. We just mum's the word. More?
When we see anything, are we missing its appearance?
You're not missing the appearance, but you're interpreting the appearance. So you actually covering it up with your concepts, your conclusions, your preconceptions, your ideas that are relatively valid. I mean, you could have other people tell you about this appearance and complain about a particular person based on their projections, their ideas, and you might stay away from that person because you believe or trust your friends to say, don't talk to George, don't go around him. He's dangerous, or he's whatever. So that kind of a relative thing, that you have to deal with the relative world. This is why people in ancient times went to mountaintops or went into monasteries and still do. This is a monastery. It's where you can draw back away and have a bodhi or awakening mandala, or a circle where the emphasis is on awakening, not just on making a living or making money or getting famous or being an entertainer or anything like that at all. Train the mind to see clearly. More. Any other questions? Any questions out there in Zoom?
Anna Maria bowing.
Anna Maria, go ahead.
When what arises is intense anger or fear, how do you discern its fullness from your filling it?
Its fullness from that you're filling it?
Yes.
Yeah. Good question. Just that you can ask that question tells me that you're looking at that dividing line, or you're looking at the way that you could say your discriminating awareness, wisdom, the natural quality of your prajna, which you don't have to create. Just stop getting in the way of it. You're actually beginning to see that. And I would say just continue. Just look at the differentiation and desire, the differentiation and the desire for this to leave or for that to increase. It's a very simple, almost surgical kind of approach to it. But it can't be fueled by too much goal orientation, other than the natural goal orientation that comes up that this is painful. Seeing this is painful. And notice that if you don't add to it, interesting, it just kind of slides away. But if you get a credential out of it sliding away, it comes right back. So because what you've done is you've left the spiritual path for 30 seconds and gone on to the mundane path of accomplishing something, spiritual materialism. Takes a while. It takes a while to do it. And you won't get, because it's not spiritual materialism, it's just the true spiritual path, you won't get a credential. You won't even get what's commonly thought of in society and in dictionaries and in Wikipedia or whatever as enlightenment. That's why anyone who is functioning as a teacher, she may not be very clear about what enlightenment is, because they realize that it's not helpful. It might satisfy one a little bit to have some words or ideas about it, but that really need to do it. So we need to relate to if someone has a student, if that true teacher, in other words, someone teaches out of what they see, not out of what they know. I'm not saying they wouldn't use their thinking process to help them. Of course, we have to communicate. These words are as a conceptual method. But what's being pointed at is not concepts, and it has no mundane existence. That's why it's transcendent. That's why that word came from. You transcend this world without leaving it. You still are here. Gravity still works. Your hunger still works. Your irritation about the lawnmower next door when you're trying to sleep still works. All that works. Adds up to what? Nothing. It doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean it's not abrasive, but it has no duration, hardly at all.
Anna Maria, bowing. You described being with the anger, and then adding feels even more painful. But sometimes being with riding the intensity of the anger, not necessarily adding, can feel more painful.
Don't ride the intensity of anger. It's not a bad metaphor, but just receive it. The anger is showing up in you. So just don't even say, here it comes. Or don't say it to make yourself at home, but do nothing with it. Be a minimalist. Function on as radical a way as you can with, this is what all shikantaza is radical meditation. Sit down, hold still, and don't do anything. I don't care if you fall asleep. I don't care if you fall over. I don't care if you get up and go to the kitchen. Watch the movement. Even if it's your body getting up and going to the can or going for a walk, just start the meditation and then watch what moves. And then 4 hours later, strike the gong again, or whatever time you've decided on. 4 hours is a good block sit.
Anna Maria, bowing, can you speak to the relationship between movement and adding, or the movement of adding? Bowing.
So if I'm following you here, I'm saying you might watch yourself because you're watching what moves, you're watching that you're adding on to something. If you do that and you don't do something to go the other way, when I say don't add, I know you can't help it. I add all the time. But if I say, if I try to approach it a different direction, it is not as direct as just saying don't add. It's just like saying train your mind. I know it's hard to train your mind, but do it anyway. When I say don't add, this brings the awareness right to how much you're adding. You actually know that you're, and you may have areas where when I say don't add, where you actually could just stop adding in that area. You might just notice that backs off as soon as you hear that someone say that, me say that. Well, it just kind of stops on its own. And then the other areas, it seems to be even more aggressive. And I would say, just observe, just observe. And if that gets intense, that's still something you're receiving. It's not something you're producing. The difference between reception and production is it's just necessary to watch what's being produced rather than going to war with it. And of course, watch whatever is being received just as another kind of an image for that is just be a good host or hoster or hostess. Just be welcome whatever comes in, even if it's your crazy uncle. Just let them come.
Just Valerie, one last question. Is my looking, or is looking for that line of demarcation, is that adding?
No. Finding it or concluding it, there's some adding going on there, but just look, just observe. If you need a conclusion, it'll just come up and it'll just be like your skin. It'll be like your green scarf. It'll just be there. But you don't have to kind of put it on, Now, you may, one of these days, you're going to receive a rock suit. I think. It's only been, what, 10 years or something like that?
Who sewed that Roxu for me?
No, it's so, I've already got your name on it and everything, and I thought the most evil, insulting name I could come up with, and that's what you're getting.
Perfect.
Perfect, I like that.
I'm trying to make my way there. I really am.
Well, this is a difficult season for any of us to go anywhere. Of course. Final questions, if we have them in here. Anyone in here? Shut up.
Are you between conclusions?
Why is Sunyo laughing? Oh, how would you answer that if you were me? Do you think I'm between conclusions? I'm in the same parking lot. It's a good question. So a little bit. It's not, but it's not a between feeling. It's just the conclusions happen with, in my experience, in my life, working with anyone that I talk to, whether it's Unyo or anyone else here, anyone else that I talk to, it's pretty much on receive. That doesn't mean that conclusions don't spontaneously occur, but they happen out of the karma that it was originally this old man who used to be a young man, used to be a lot of things a long time ago in other wherever. So any conclusion, I'm not arguing with anything. So if a conclusion comes up, the practice is to not conclude if you can help it, but you can't help it. But so then you become really clear about the conclusions that you can take some of the fuel or the energy away from, and the other ones that you're just, that's going to be just kind of a reminder of what a fool you are. I mean that, just that you're not going to get what you wanted. You get what you got. And did you get something? Maybe. You can't particularly help people who are struggling with their anger, their aggression, their passion, their death wish, or whatever it may be, unless if you've gotten rid of all of your problems and you're suddenly some bright and shiny person, angelic being. You have to help people. This is what the metaphor for Kshitigarbha or Jizo bodhisattva, going into any of the realms, in particular the hell realm. Meet everyone where they're at. It might be hell.
What does shining mean in my name?
Means that you're the shining path. Yeah, it means that just look at everything that's lit up. Look at what's path is all lit up. And you're a monk, so you've got a good start. You actually have a form and a structure where you're a young man, you can practice for the next 50, 60 years, pretty much, unless the government lets us. Rinpoche moved to Canada. I think he was concerned about being persecuted in this country. You can kind of see where that might show up more. Any further questions out there in Zoom land? Okay, so we'll dedicate the merit from here, and you can all join us. Who will lead that?
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi shifu, shison mu samoko sa, moko jamo. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all
all Buddhas, all venerable ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.